Welcome to Humble Ground, a podcast where the heart of agriculture meets the stories that feed the world. Behind every meal is a farmer, a rancher, and a legacy of hard work. Here, we shine a light on their journeys, their challenges, and their triumphs, because every meal has a story, and it's time we heard it.
Hey everybody, welcome to the next episode of Humble Ground. Pretty excited. We're in Dodge City, Kansas today. We've got a guy from Shiner, Texas, which is the home place of my favorite beer in the entire world. So we might even talk about that, but we're just going to jump into it. Make sure to share this with your friends, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Without further ado, Keith, thanks so much for coming to Kansas, I guess, and meeting us.
You bet.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about where you grew up, kind of what, I guess, early life was for you.
I grew up in Goliad, Texas. And if you're a student of Texas history, there was Goliad, the Alamo, Gonzales. So that's where a lot of history of the state of Texas in that area. And my mom's family's been there since the 1840s. And grew up there. All the relatives were cow guys. A few of them farmed. Had one of them that had a dairy. So spent a lot of time around them, and just kind of what I like to do and be outside and be involved with agriculture. Grew up there. Went to A&M. That's where I met my wife. And when I got out of school, her dad operates a feed yard in deep South Texas, about 90 miles from Mexico. And so we spent the next 20 years down there working for him, and that's where I learned a lot of what I know about feed yards from him.
What kind of operation was that? What kind of size? What, said spent 20 years there, so obviously probably worked a, wide variety of jobs in that particular feed yard, I assume?
Oh, yeah. Actually helped physically build most of it. So it started out as a 5,000 head yard when I got there, and over the years we added on to it. And like I said, we did most of it ourselves. So grew up to like 14,000, and just was involved in everything. And so it was a great experience, and because you get to learn every aspect of it, from washing water tanks to buying cattle to dealing with vendors and all this stuff. So, I mean, it's an interesting perspective. And then we have personally fed cattle since mid-90s. So, and just that as time goes on, like everything, you do a little bit, make a few coins and do a little bit more, and just life goes on. So just never-ending growth.
So you spent 20 years in that feedlot. How'd you get to where you had your own feedlot, your own, ag business essentially? What, after you left the feedlot, or I assume you left the feedlot, or are you still involved in that?
No, okay. We left there in 2014, and we moved to Shiner, which is about 50 miles from where I grew up. And it's an odd story how we ended up there and why, because we got into the oil field business, a service business. And so in that part of Texas, if you ever heard of the Eagleford, it's a big shale play down there. And so this is a kind of a funny story, because I was riding pins on Christmas Day 2011. And there was a caravan of trucks coming by, because where we lived, there was some disposal facilities, and that infrastructure wasn't built out in the heart of the play yet. So there was some old stuff there, and I mean, just coming by like a carnival. And I'm riding pins on Christmas Day, and these trucks are coming by, and I said, man, if there's that much activity on holiday, I need to look into this. And so in that period of time, we ran a lot of grass cattle, yearlings, and we'd resell them. And a drought started that was just horrendous. So all of our grass country was burned up, nowhere to go with cattle. So a little light clicked on in my head, said, well, maybe we need to diversify. And so we took cattle feeding money, and I bought 4 trucks, parked them in my driveway, and we started trucking business. And that was in the beginning of 2012. And then we moved those trucks within about 6 months. We moved them up to the Shiner area, Gonzales area. And I stayed working at the feed yard for 2 more years. And as that business was able to support us, then we moved up there and grew it to where we had 40 trucks. So little by little by little, kind of like feeding cattle, have a little success, you grow. So that's what we did. And so as that business evolved, then it was kind of coincidental, and it was really lucky at the same time, because as we moved working capital into the trucking business to grow it, we pretty much sidestepped the debacle of 2014, 15. So we had some exposure still feeding cattle, but not to the scale that we were prior. So we kind of dodged that bullet. And then as we started running more yearlings again, I had some cattle in 16 that I wanted to feed. And a friend of mine from South Texas who had done some nutritional work for us down there was doing the work here. So I called him up and I said, man, I got some yearlings I want to feed. I said, you got anywhere you'd recommend? He said, yeah, call this guy. So we sent the cattle up here. We started feeding cattle here and got to know Travis. And 2 years later, the place was for sale. Well, here we go. Why not? So we bought the thing. It was a 12,000 head feed yard, permitted for 14. And there was enough land size around here. I mean, it's a most ideal place because the packing houses are here. All the services that you need, equipment, medicine, feeds, all that stuff is 4 miles down the road. It's pretty ideal. So we looked at it and kind of just started to draw out a master plan. What can we do? How can we transform this thing? And so the evolution started. And hopefully by June, we'll have completed the 3rd phase of what we've done, and we'll be at 46,000.
It's a heck of a facility, and I think you're right. There's so much here that makes it a perfect spot for it. I'd like to dive into just. I love how you've got to where you are, it makes sense. You spent the 20 years in the industry. You learned everything you needed to, and then now you're, doing it on your scale. Do you have a feedlot in Texas at all?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
So in Gonzales, we have an order buying business, and we have a background in the yard. And then there's 2 outside ranches, and we start auction calves. So we buy our own cattle, we start our own cattle, grow them, and then they come to Kansas to finish. So we'll ship about 20,000 calves out of that facility a year to Kansas. So the model there, I mean, we're trying to just be as integrated as possible, So you can pay somebody a fee to go buy them. You can pay somebody to start them. You can pay somebody to finish them. And then you can just own cattle. So it's not a real high margin business, but collectively they're not bad.
Yeah.
The feed yard's the revenue stream. The background in yard is, the cattle are, the order buying is, and we farm at home, grow our own feed. So that was the mindset behind that all. And what's interesting about that yard is the first load of cattle I ever bought in 95 came out of that facility that we ended up buying later.
It's funny how it works, and it's funny how all that stuff seems to always come back around. For people that don't understand cattle and feedlots and things of that nature, what are some of the huge differences between having cattle in the deep South as compared to having cattle in Kansas? Is there a huge difference from a weather perspective, from like all of those different things, or do they run pretty similarly in your mind?
Our business model is around buying high-risk calves. So there's a lot of cattle in this world. I mean, they're unweaned. Somebody has to do it, right? So you can go to Dodge and buy a yearling that's cookie cutter ready to go, throw him in the pen and feed him. And I often refer it to as we're buying a fixer-upper, right? So you buy something at a discount because of the unknowns around the health and the outcome of the situation you're fixing to encounter. And then we do the work and we add value, and we're trying to create an animal that's equivalent in quality to something you can buy here locally, but it's considerably cheaper because, I mean, his existence is pretty organic. We did all the work, and it is a lot of work. But, you know, that's just the model we choose because I think it makes the most sense. You know, the issues we deal with down there is heat and humidity. The issues you deal up here with is the wind blows too damn much and it gets cold, you know. So, but where we are is, I mean, cow-calf country, big time. I think 4 of the largest cow-calf counties in America surround us. So, I mean, there's more cows in our county than there is in some states. So, I mean, we have a network of guys that go out and buy. We're in about 40 sales throughout Southeast Texas, and we buy cattle, and we're very particular about what we buy because we are going into a facility. We're selling everything value-based. So we're going into a packing house in Dodge, and we're killing against northern cattle, right? So we have to have the quality that's comparable to that, to the local population.
That makes sense, though. I mean, like I said, buying a fixer-upper, there's obviously risk, but I think the reward's higher too, I would have to assume. So I can see the definite benefits of doing that. You touched on farming, so tell me a little bit about the farming side, and is that something that you got into that just for the feed side, or is that something that, you know?
Absolutely, because like I said, it's cow country. There's a lot of decent farm ground around, but it's in grass. Not very many farmers around, and not many farmers that want to sell silage. And it's important for us in our program to have a silage-based diet. So that's how we got into it, is because I didn't want to not have it. So we just, you can't go buy it, you go make it, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We don't farm a lot, but we farm enough to serve our needs.
That's all you need. Up here in Dodge, is this all, like, is everything brought into here, or do you farm up here too?
No. I mean, we've got some circles around that we dewater lagoons on, and we have it custom farmed, chop silage on it. But we use quite a bit, so we just buy it from local farmers, what we need.
Yeah. I'd love to talk a little bit of numbers on just, again, I love talking feedlot numbers and stuff like that. And you'd said, what, 46,000 here and what, 5,000 down south? So right around 50,000. What's it take to keep things moving? I think people don't understand what it takes to feed that many animals. I mean, how many people are we talking to keep this place moving every day?
So we have about 40 employees here. Yards at capacity, you know, you're putting out 1.5 million pounds of feed. So lots of ins and outs, commodities coming in all the time. You know, you're milling 10, 12 loads of corn a day, distillers coming in, liquids, all the supplements, what have you. Plus just the ins and outs, you know, you turn a yard. Because of the population we have, they're a longer day animal than some of the cattle that are bought around these parts. You know, we feed a lot of 200-day cattle. And, but you're still turning a feed yard 1.5 times a year. So it's 50,000, but 1.5 times. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff going out, a lot of stuff coming in all the time. And we have a crew of about 12 people down in Texas. My son runs that yard and my daughter works there. Yeah, they do. They're good. They do a good job for us. So, pretty lucky.
I think it's neat that the next generation, I guess, is working there. And so you have that ability to know that your legacy is going to be carried out, hopefully for future generations.
Yeah, going back to the family deal, it's important that it's an environment that's sustainable. What I see a lot, and not a lot, but the things where it doesn't work right is there's my generation, and this is the way it's going to be, and I don't give a rip what you think, and, I'd like to think that we raise pretty smart kids. And you got to give them credit. Hell, they're half you, so you think something's good in there. So, but I mean, they're all blessed with intelligence and talents and stuff, and I mean, cultivate it. It's your best asset.
Yeah, and I think again they've grown up around it, and so it's easy to, if they're teachable and they want to learn, I mean, why not? And again, if you can make it to where it's something that's sustainable, I think that's the problem. Is you're right. I think there's a lot of operations that sometimes fail because the current generation doesn't want to give it away to the next generation, or doesn't want to at least open the door to give it away to the next generation. And then you spend 30 years, it's like, man, they could have had the opportunity to work into it and worked alongside each other. And I've seen some of that. So it's cool to see that you're actually opening the door and allowing them, to take over things and do things. Because
I want them to be successful.
Sure.
And I want I don't want me to hold back their ability to progress and make a great living, be good business people, be good people in general, and you gotta kind of cultivate that, because it's not everybody wants to do this. Not everybody wants to farm. Not everybody. I mean, there's a lot of this stuff that's not very glamorous, and you have to appreciate the lifestyle. You want to be involved in it, and so if you see a generation or you see young folks that want to be involved in it, I think you need to embrace them and try to cultivate that.
What's it take from a, where you've got operations in two different states that are quite a few miles apart? What's it take to keep them moving? Like, I assume you have to have good people.
Great people. Hire them. Travis was here, and I told him, I said, look, man, this is a long way from home. It's a big commitment for me, but I said, I'm good with it if you're going to hang around, because you got to have somebody that you trust that's looking out for the interest of the business, because it's 700 miles from where I live. And he's a great manager, a great person, and it's critical. It's very critical. And so you have to find people, cultivate what you want, communicate your expectations. One thing I've learned is you can't micromanage certain things, because if you ever want to grow your business, you can't have that mentality, because there's only so many things that you can keep your thumb on and control, right? So you have to cultivate a group of people that's around you that are like-minded, and they understand what we're trying to do and why we're doing it. And like the old saying, you find people that want to ride for the brand.
And it seems like you've done a really good job with that. Like I said,
I always like preaching about culture, right? Amongst our people. You need to develop a winning culture. And part of the thing, like the expansion we've done, it motivates folks because it's something new, and it's, my old saying is if a business isn't growing, it's dying. Take that for what it's worth, but you think about that. If you don't have something new and exciting to motivate your people and keep them interested in what's going on, Then, like the new tractor. Oh, shoot, yeah, everybody wants to drive the new tractor because it's cool and smells neat and all that stuff. But you get to where, no, I don't want to spend that kind of money. I don't want to do this, don't want to do that. And then you got a bunch of old junk laying around there, and everybody's mad at the world because nothing works right, and all you do is fumble around. And what's interesting, was always of that opinion. And then, like in the trucking business, when COVID came around, so we were pretty growth oriented, and there was always something new, a new customer, new equipment, new this, new that, adding on, growing, going. And then the COVID showed up, and it stopped that dead in the tracks. You couldn't source equipment. I mean, everything kind of slows down, and the business pretty much stagnated. And then you kind of watch people's demeanor, the excitement of something new and something, a new customer or new this, new that kind of keeps you invigorated. It all ceased. And then you can kind of see things just kind of start to deteriorate, right? And it kind of confirmed what I've always suspected, that, you got to give people some motivation that, this is a healthy company. This is a healthy environment. If you hang around, you play with this team and you play by our rules, man, we'll take care of you. It's a good atmosphere, right?
It's great. I think there are a lot of companies that get super stagnant in what they do, and you see people leave because they're tired of working on machines, they're tired of having stuff not work, and so I think
and there's no opportunity for them.
Yeah, and they know that, and they can see that, and then they see somebody else down the road that, especially here, where you're not the only feedlot. So if you're not having something that makes people want to stay, they're just going to say, I'll just go somewhere else.
Right.
On your feedlot side, how many of the cattle do you own, and how much is custom fed?
So about 40% of the population here is company.
Okay.
And when I say company, I'm talking about my kids as well. So got a few employees that will feed cattle with us, and my dad, mom, and my kids. And so most of what we feed is stuff that comes up from the south, and then the balance of the cattle are customers.
What's it like, I guess, coming out of COVID? We were talking last night at supper, and I think Travis made a really good point. He said, man, beef production seemed to really take a spike up because people were at home and they were eating more. What's your thoughts on that? Did that make the market change enough, or was that just more of like hey, we're going to just start because we're actually sitting down for meals now as a family? Like, how do you think COVID affected the beef world?
It was the best thing ever happened to demand. And then it allowed people that were stuck at home, that watched too much YouTube and cooking shows and all that, to experiment with things and kind of expand their palate and learn things. And so as they learned these things and they saw that that's pretty good, or let's try this and try that. And so it's not just hamburger helper or something like that. You're doing some different things with different cuts. And the benefit then is that as you start looking at different cuts of beef, not just a ribeye or hamburger, then people start to kind of experiment with different things, and then it adds value to other cuts. They start looking at different muscles throughout the chuck and stuff, and do single muscle cuts and all these things that are super flavorful, super tender, and they get to experiment with all these cooking techniques. And Food Network is great for the beef industry because, people they get exposed to this stuff. So it was great. It was a terrible time, but it was great for demand. And even as beef prices have gone up, the demand is still solid, and it kind of, I don't know, I'm not going to doubt it. It's just, it's solid. It's solid for sure.
Right now, the market obviously is incredibly high.
Yes, sir.
How tough does that make things for you? Or is that something that you just kind of go with the flow? Like, how has that affected your day-to-day operations? How has that affected your buying thought process? Or has it affected it?
Well, I mean, the first thing that it does is you run out of money. So, I mean, it's just a fact of the matter. Everybody's had to expand their credit lines and do all this stuff, and it just takes lots and lots of money to do what we do. And, I mean, considerably more than it did 10 years ago or 20 years ago. And, man, I distinctly remember the first time I sold a fat steer for $1,000 and thought that was the coolest thing ever. And now we buy $1,500, $1,700 5-weight calves all day, you know, and it's so different. And I think the biggest challenge then is that the amount of operating capital that you need to do it, and that can hinder growth, you know. So that can be problematic, but we're also very religious hedgers. Had my tail kicked once or twice before, and you know, you learn from your mistakes. You learn from things that didn't turn out well. So, well, I told my son 100 times, I said, ag's not about making money. It's about not losing money. That's what it boils down to. So equity preservation is goal number one, so that you can be there next year. You're a farmer. You need to do what you can to hold it together, to get through a bad year, bad commodity prices, bad weather, whatever, so that you can do it again next year and hopefully have a better year. So, but when you go for broke and you crap out, you're screwed. It's over with, right? So, always pretty mindful about being around for the next go round. We're, you know, record high feeder prices. I mean, it's insane what some of these calves and yearlings are bringing. Somewhere down the line, not sure when, but it's going to correct. I mean, $9 corn fixed $9 corn, didn't it?
Yep.
Or $8 corn, whatever the hell. It cost us $9 to get it here. So high prices cure high prices. You know, you either destroy demand or you increase supply. It's part of the free market. But when you take an animal that's worth $2,200 and all of a sudden he's worth $1,500, it's hard to absorb that. I mean, there's a lot of people that can. Probably wouldn't do us in, but it damn sure make you uncomfortable. And I don't like the anxiety of worrying about it. So when we buy one, we hedge them. We trade lots of options. Gives us some flexibility. But what I've concluded is that when you're open to the world, you're fixated on the market, any moves the market makes, and it's too consuming to try to follow what goes on. And then ultimately it affects your decision-making process, and you don't do what you need to be doing. You need to be buying one. Buy the next one to replace the one you just sold. And then you'll just lock down and he's too high, we can't do this because I'm worried about where the market's going to go. I mean, have a plan, implement it, and regardless of where the market's gone, up or down, just be religious about what you do and just roll with it. I mean, our ass kicking's coming. I'm just not sure when. The last 2 Januaries, I told my wife, I said, with what these calves and what these yearlings cost, there's absolutely no way we're going to make money feeding cattle this year. And I was wrong twice. But I'm going to say it every year till I'm right. Maybe this year, maybe next year, I don't know. But, I mean, a correction's in play. And I think we'll find a spot to where you can't move the beef at that level. Something's going to give. The cow herd will grow. Beef numbers will grow. Packing houses will close. Something's going to happen. But some of the biggest wrecks in the cattle market have been non-fundamental. You know, 9/11, the recession in 08, 09, the little mini recession in 98. I mean, COVID. It's not about, I mean, that's not supply and demand at all. I mean, that's a non-fundamental issue that tanked the market. Last year, the market set back $30 on bird flu, right? So because of our philosophy and our risk management program, when you encounter a deal like the bird flu and the feeder market goes down $30, that's the opportunity to buy one. It's the way I see it.
Yeah, you gotta strike at the opportunity.
So,
and you gotta ride that. Yeah, you gotta ride it out every year. I think that's great. Like you said, it's not about just making money. There's a lot of years it's just how do we not lose enough money to where we can't go next year.
It's a fatal flaw if your focus is on profitability, because you're always second guessing yourself, or you're not able to act because he's not going to make. Well, that animal's only going to break even. So what? You don't know that. I thought the one you thought was going to work lost money. So, I mean, who's to say? You don't know. You don't know.
Oh, it's such a wild industry. What's it like, though, being part of an industry that you're bringing beef to people's tables, to people's freezers, to restaurants, to whatever? Like, I think that has to be one of the coolest things to sit back and think, man, we bring a lot of beef to, the consumption of beef. Like, what's that like to know when you sit back and look at a 30,000-foot view over the years?
I think that's the perspective that you always need to keep in mind is we're not ranchers, we're not yearling guys, we're not feed yard operators or cattle feeders. I mean, we're in the food production business. That's what we do. And our focus needs to be on raising a good product because it's food for the world. And what's interesting about this feed yard is we're 4 miles from the plant. The plant we sell to has a big international presence in Asia. So you get people from abroad that come to the plant on business, and then they come do the tour and see the feed yard. So you got people from all over the world that have come to this yard and get to see what we do. And then, kind of changes your perspective that something that we started in Gonzales, Texas, got healthy, brought to Dodge City, finished, harvested, ended up in Korea, feeding somebody that, they've got no clue even the whole chain of events that took place to get that product in front of them. And then, we had people from the Northeast come do a tour. They're big retailers, guys that are in food service and all this stuff. And what's interesting there is guys that, their living or their business evolves around selling beef or, merchandising the product, and how naive they are about what we do.
I think there's a lot of that, though. Like, I've posted some videos of feedlots or, stuff, and everybody on the internet, right, loves to bash feedlots.
Yeah.
Or dairies, confinement animals. We did a poultry one. And it's like, here's the thing. This is just my take, but I'm going to guess you're going to agree with it. Feedlots have to be in place, right? All the comments are like, well, that's just terrible for the animals, or go put them out on grass, or go do this. Well, there's so many problems with that particular statement when it comes to feeding the masses.
Right.
Like, without feedlots, you cannot just produce a lot of beef. Like,
You can't produce protein in any form.
No.
Because, one, it's horrible for the environment because, the head count that you'd have to have and the land mass that it would take to do that, it's not possible. We'd be the thinnest vegetarians around because, it's you can't produce things on scale. So everything's about being efficient, right? That's the most efficient way to produce a pound of protein. And you can't let them run around and eat grass. God made ruminants to eat forage. We feed them a starch diet, but they gain 4 times more doing that, and it consumes corn that's grown. That's just an ignorant statement to think that, they all need to be running loose and whatever.
Yeah, there definitely wouldn't be a fraction of the beef out there without feedlots. I mean,
you have to think about this. Do the math on what one cost. So what's the investment in a 40,000 head feed yard? I mean, look at the total dollars of cattle, right? And so is that not an ignorant point of view to think that whatever we do for that animal is not to keep them as comfortable as possible, to feed them as well as possible? I mean, just simple economics tell you that's the scenario, right? Yeah, I might bought a $2,500 yearling. I'm going to treat him like crap, put him in a mud hole, and feed him shitty feed. No, it's stupid. It's an it's an ignorant point. So, I mean, we go through great lengths to make sure their diet's balanced, they're comfortable, their pens are clean, their water's clean, all these things, because it's in our financial interest for them to be comfortable, because that makes them efficient, and efficiency drives profitability. So, there's just people that we're several generations removed from people that lived on the farm, had a cow in the backyard, had chickens, and did all that stuff. The way my mom grew up, to where they had sheep, chickens, pigs, cows, and all that, and a big garden. So her perspective on things is different than what a 20-year-old would be.
Sure.
That thinks all your staples come from Walmart, and that somewhere in the back of Walmart there's a meat making machine that kicks out ribeyes and chicken breast, or milk. And it's can be troubling too, because as people are more and more removed away from the rural lifestyle, their appreciation for where their food comes from diminishes, and they take things for granted, then they have ignorant points of view.
Like, we travel so much, and you catch a lot of people. And I'm not going to say that everybody in the city is at fault. I just think there's a lot of people that aren't educated on agriculture, because agriculture has historically not done a great job of telling their story.
Right.
So that's what, I love these conversations, right? And there's going to be people that knock it, and that just is what it is. But it's the truth. Like, to invest so much money, like I said, in a 40, 50,000 head feedlot, the amount of money, A, you have in infrastructure, and B, you have in cattle is astronomical. And what they cost now is astronomical. Why wouldn't you do all the things in place to make sure that they're as well taken care of as they possibly can be, to have a great product at the end of it? Yeah. And that's, at the end of the day, you want a great product at the end of the day that can go to the packing house, that then it goes from there, obviously, wherever it goes. So why, everybody has this huge misconception about feedlots. And I wish people would come out here and see that, man, it's not as bad as you think it is driving by. Everybody just sees the pens and they see all this stuff.
Yeah.
But if you actually spend some time and go to them, they eat great. They have water readily available. You always have somebody riding pens to check on. We're out there this morning. You got people riding all over. The feed truck drivers are looking at them to make sure that everything's okay. If they do get sick, you've got, procedures in place to make sure that they don't die.
Right.
I think people they don't think about that.
Right.
And it's frustrating. And actually I would say, we had a bunch of comments on a video, and I would say most of the negative comments, were from other people in the ag industry, which was kind of surprising to me. So there were other ones that were cow-calf operators or whatever. And there was a lot from overseas and stuff like that. But, knocking on the feedlot industry. I'm like,
really?
And saying, no, they should be out on grass, right? And I'm not going to get into a grass-fed, corn-fed thing, because obviously that's a huge argument. But it's there's different ways to do things. There's a lot of different ways to do a lot of different things. When it comes to raising beef, there is different ways to do things. But I think to do it at scale, you have to do it in a feedlot situation. There's no better way to
do it at scale and do it affordably, right? What is everybody squawking about? The cost of groceries,
right?
So let's revert our model back to something that's, half as efficient, and our production is decreased, and the cost of the thing goes up. I mean, that's pretty simple economics, right?
Sure.
So our country's had a cheap food policy for years. And so they incentivize us and encourage us to be very good at what we do so that we can feed the masses. And I think it's very important for our country to be, food independent, self-sustaining in food and energy, and we're the leaders in the world in agriculture, cattle feeding, dairies, hogs, all that stuff. But the free market's at work. It's incentivized us to be good at what we do because it's in your financial interest. So I don't know. I mean, a cow-calf guy having anything negative to say about a feed yard's mildly ignorant as well. I mean, that's the market for them. I mean, going back to my grandma, I mean, you had old laying hens and you'd eat a yard bird for lunch that was like eating rubber. I mean, that to eating some of the products that we create now, I mean, the eating experience is so much different, so much better. And interesting deal down there where we live, Cal Maine has got a big laying facility. So, I mean, they're a big egg producer. And so there's locals around that work for that company. And then as the cage-free thing starts to evolve and people want them out of the cages and this and that. And one of the guys was saying that one of the founders of the company was down there looking at it, and he said, man, like for 40 years we worked to become more efficient and move these birds inside so we can control the environment and do all these things. And he said, now, he said, like we're going backwards, we're regressing. Turn them out, let them run around. Coyote eats the chicken and can't find the egg out in the grass. Like he said, man, what are we doing here? And then that egg costs twice as much. But I mean, there's a certain portion of the population that's what they want. Let's give it to them. But it's also something that you see in this country. It's something that's you see because you can afford it. You know, there's people in parts of this world that they can give two hoots whether it was cage-free organic or free range or whatever. They just want something to eat. And so as the society becomes more affluent, then being selective about those things becomes pertinent, you know.
We've gotten so widespread, I guess, as a nation that it's like, what happened to just having chicken and pork and beef and stuff like that? Now there's so many like, well, I won't eat it unless it's grass-fed beef. And then you get into this, you know, huge argument about grass-fed versus grain-fed versus.
Oh yeah. And
it's like, man, there's just, which is what it is. That could be a whole nother podcast, and we won't get into that. But it's,
yeah,
I don't know. It's got to be
like the quote I read somewhere one day. There's never been an activist in a blizzard because all of a sudden you're just worried about surviving, right? And so, I mean, the whole mindset's evolved with the country and the amount of wealth that's in this country and the people that can afford to do it and have an opinion. And if that's what you feel you need to do, there's a certain group among us that supply them. But, I mean, oddly enough, I know enough guys that have had ventures in the organic side and this and that. And the nuts and bolts of it was you make half as much and charge twice as much. In the end, you're net equal to what you were doing before. So, but there's a consumer that wants it, so they provide it to them.
Yeah. No, it's like I said, we could go on and on about that for days. And like I said, I don't want to come across that I'm against any of that. I just have found it interesting that we went so far away from just this, and now it's just branched off. And then there's so many different conversations about, well, I'm not going to eat it because
right.
you give, you vaccinate your cattle. Right. Or whatever the case may be. And it's like, I think it's just everybody wants to argue about everything realistically at the end of the day.
Right. But you look at this. So I started working in a feed yard 31 years ago, and we sent cattle to the plant that weighed 1,000 pounds, you know. So as our cow numbers have just continued to decrease, the outweight on fed cattle has grown to where the average outweight on the steers, the company cattle that we fed last year was like 1446. So, you know, almost 450 pounds more live weight than 30 years ago. And so there's a couple things at play. One, genetics have gotten better. And there's some of the technologies that we can use. Our milling techniques have gotten better. We just learned so many things, how to be more efficient. And then at the end of the day, because you fed them so much longer and you got them to a higher degree of finish, then the quality of the product improved. So genetics improved the product. Days on feed improved the product. The technologies and the methodologies that we've learned over time have improved the product. And so we shrank the cow herd and produce more beef than we did 30 years ago and do it more efficiently.
We're going to have to.
Sure.
I mean, to keep up with the demand. And, I mean, you have to find ways to be efficient. And you have to find ways to always be trying to have a better product. I think, or it's not going to work.
Right.
You know, and then you fight all those factors of, again, markets. And, I mean, there's a million different things. But it's neat to it's neat to talk perspectives. And I love the perspective that you have about, you know, your philosophies and things like that. And I love what you built here because it is a beautiful facility.
Thank you.
You've definitely taken the extra steps to make sure of that. A few more questions and we'll get out of here. Like I said, I appreciate you coming on. I would assume you've been in the feedlot industry a long time. You've got some pretty good stories. Any of them able to be told on a podcast?
Yeah. I mean, there are countless ones. I mean, good, bad, and
The one you told last night was pretty entertaining.
yeah. Well, that was eye-opening experience. Riding pins with a guy, and he walks up to me and he hands me his wallet and he said, "Hey man, can you hang on to this?" I said, "Sure, why?" And he pointed over his shoulder and he said, "Well, because they're here for me." And I turned around and looked and there was a DEA vehicle, state police, local sheriff's department, and a paddy wagon. So we walked down the cattle alley to the end, told us to dismount. We got down and patted him down and shackled him right there while they had a loaded shotgun pulled on us both. And a nervous little DEA guy that was shaking like a leaf. And I thought, oh, this dude's going to shoot one of us on accident. So, and took my help, left me in his left me there with his horse, and I had to do his job too. And they hauled him off in the paddy wagon. But and when we were in South Texas, drove up to the yard one morning and saw some blue lights through the fog. I drove up to it and it was a state trooper. And I actually knew the guy because he washed water troughs for us when he was in high school. And I said, "Man, what are you doing here?" He said, "Oh, there's a bailout." So a car ran through the feed yard, crashed into a pen. Brand new stolen Tahoe sitting in the feed yard. Nobody was in it. They bailed out and ran. Just silly stuff like that.
Weird spot to park your car. But hey, you know.
Yeah, he hit it hard enough to where he pulled the cemented post and gate and pulled it up all out of the ground, totaled the car. And I asked the guy, I said, "Hey man, can I have the car?" He said, "I'd let you have it, but it's stolen." So then you'd have a stolen vehicle in your possession.
Yeah, that wouldn't be good.
But a lot of characters.
I'm sure there's a few. Yeah, especially even owning a trucking business. I'm sure you've ran across plenty of characters.
Holy smokes, I'll tell you what.
But the turnover rate in the trucking business has got to be pretty high.
Pretty high. Met some good people, good hardworking folks, and met some sad stories. Just guys that can't get out of their own way. And I mean, that's sad to see.
Yeah.
People with all the opportunity in front of them and just, I mean, whatever kind of personal issues they have, whether it's marital, family, or just substances, people are their own worst enemies. And having the opportunity to be around so many different people and what the perspective that I have on people versus someone that's a white-collar perspective. I mean, we're salt of the earth kind of people, and I mean, you see some really interesting characters. So my perspective on people is different than someone else that is in a different profession, right? In a professional profession. So I make it a habit to pick up on tendencies of folks, and I can meet somebody and not to brag, but about 30 seconds, I can size them up pretty quick, because about 10,000 folks later that got to meet a lot of people over the years, and they come and go for whatever reasons. And we got some context clues that I'm not going to share with you, but I mean, it's pretty well known amongst our group that you look for certain things, and
You got to, though.
I mean, they're glaring indicators of what you're dealing with.
Sure.
Like, holy cow.
Yeah, and running a business, I mean, you got to try to alleviate risk at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
to change subjects a bit, back to the business. I mean, I think the important point of our success is my wife and I have a pretty unique relationship, one that we can get along and work together and not kill each other. But she brings a different perspective to things than I do. Her focus is on the business side of things, the accounting side of things, and is very diligent and very good at what she does. And our partnership has always been, I focus on operations and how to grow, how to expand on opportunities, and she runs behind me cleaning up my messes. But it's neither one of us, I don't think, would have had the opportunity to be successful had it not been for our relationship and our ability to just kind of jive,
I think you got to have that, though. And like I said, family is super important. So it's awesome to see that your family's integrated as well, kids, and look forward to the future. So the last question I got really is about the future. What's the future look like for you all? What's the next 5, 10, 15 years look like?
Like I told you earlier, if your business isn't growing, it's dying. So, I mean, we're growth oriented. The challenge we face today is the fact that everything costs so damn much, right? So that can stymie growth, but I mean, it's growth oriented regardless in some form or fashion. Whether it's at home or it's here, I mean, our focus long term is, and I mean, all the key people in our group are on board with this. I mean, we're going to take this show on the road, I like Southwest Kansas. I like this part of the world. I like what we have down there. And just as opportunities present themselves, we're going to expand upon it. And y'all have driven around and seen what goes on here, and there's some kind of innovative things that we've done that I think give us a competitive advantage over someone that won't embrace that. And so, bit of a risk taker in that perspective, that we're willing to invest in certain things that may be a little out of the ordinary, but I think long term have benefit. And so as we're going to just poke and prod and find those things that allow us to continue to grow and use these ideas and innovations to our advantage to make us more efficient, because ultimately it's a competition for everything. So we have to be better at what we do than the guy down the road. May not necessarily have to be the cheapest, but we have to offer things to people that make them want to do business with us. Have a nice facility that's well ran, and be good people, good people to do business with. I mean, we take a lot of pride in being honest about our approach, being pretty transparent with people that we do business with, and just pretty fundamental things. I mean, like I always told guys that they work for us, man, just do your job. This isn't hard. It's not, just do your job, be better than the next guy. And sad to say, it's not that hard anymore, because there's so many people that are lazy, are unambitious. They get an entitlement mindset, whatever it is. I don't know. And COVID brought the worst of it out in them because of all the free stuff that was given away. People learned accelerated their knowledge of the fact that you can sit on your tail and survive somehow. And so they kind of embrace that lifestyle. So I've told many people, I said, man, just get your ass to work. Show up on time. You got half of them whooped right there, right? Just have just an ounce of give a damn. Because the bar is so low, you know. I mean,
it doesn't take much to impress. Yeah.
Yeah, you got a lot of them beat by just doing some really small fundamental things like be on time and dependable. God dang, when that eliminates 2/3 of the competition, well, that's as my son, when he was a young kid, he was working with a guy to rope calves, and he ran down there and he caught a calf, got off and tied him, and that old man walked up to him and he said, "You know what, son?" He said, "You ought to be proud because there's 99.9% of the people in this country can't do that." He said, "But that other 0.1%," he said, "they're the ones you got to worry about because they're good, way better than you are. But you accomplished something that most people can't do. But it's the ones that got it mastered. That's the ones you got to be after."
Yep. No, I think you're right. It's just, and I bet that's a challenge, always trying to find people to show up to work. I mean, and it's sad as that sounds fundamentally, just to show up on time and do your job is a thing that.
And to care and have pride. I mean, that's why earlier in the conversation, I was talking about preaching about culture, developing a positive culture, and create an environment where people are proud to be there and they're proud to wear your brand, you know, because, I mean, they're good folks, you know, and it's hard to do that sometimes when you're caught up in a million things and, I ain't worried about old Joe, you know. But, I mean, it's constant team building. Hey, man, let's do it. And it's not riding somebody's case about doing it. I mean, you got to tell them when they do a good job. Hey, man, that's good. That looks good, you know. And just this constant negative. Always picking. They get tired of that. I mean, pat on the back every now and then. We all need it, right?
Yep.
So, I mean, it's a different mindset, and employees are different. You have to handle them different, and the old school way of scream, holler, cuss, and threaten to fire them deal, you do that enough, you might be the only one there.
Yeah.
And so you have to, if you're going to be growth oriented, it takes a team to do something, because we can't run this yard with one person. It's having a good crew is integral to what we do. And if we're going to continue to grow, you have to cultivate more and more good people. So you have to have the environment to do it. So, I mean, your approach to how you deal with folks, and it's feed yard, running a restaurant, doing what you do, whatever. I mean, there's a lot of commonality there on what your approach is going to be and needs to be successful, and to have the right kind of folks around you that are like-minded.
No, I think that's a perfect way to end. I want to say thanks for your time. I know you got a million things going on, and love talking business, love talking all that stuff with you. Again, can't stress enough how nice of an operation this is, and we appreciate the opportunity to come here. But check them out. We'll link their website and Facebook and all that kind of stuff. As far as us, thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe, send it to your friends, your family, whoever. And we look forward to seeing you at the next one.